by the Constitution of Lebanon, the president has to be Christian. And Lebanon is a multi-confessional society. There are Shia, there are Sunnis, there are Jews, there are Christians. And they worked out, all these different groups just worked out the system where, different offices were reserved for different sects. The president is supposed to be Christian. Now, the president is not supposed to be the head of the military, but the man who won the election, was Joseph Aoun, was and is, in fact, the head of the military. So that's unconstitutional, but it doesn't seem to be bothering anyone. Now, just as some background to this, this was actually a fact that I wasn't aware of, but I learned this from Craig Murray, that 50% of all the salaries that are paid to members of the Lebanese Armed Forces, we're not talking about Hezbollah, we're talking about the government, official government forces, 50% is paid by the U.S. So, you wonder, like, every time that Israel attacks or invades Lebanon, you wonder why the Lebanese army is just standing on the sidelines, twiddling their thumbs and not doing anything. And Hezbollah is doing all the fighting, defending Lebanon. Well, I think you got a big part of your answer right there. Clearly the U.S. exerts tremendous control over the Lebanese armed forces. And this Joseph Aoun was pretty much picked by the Americans. The Americans said, we want you to vote for him. I mean, they sent their emissary to the Middle East, Hochstein, who's also, I think, an Israeli citizen, by the way. And he told everybody in the Lebanese parliament, we want you to vote for this man. And the French sent their own emissary, and they said the same thing, we want you to vote for this man. He didn't succeed on the first vote, but my understanding is that he did get elected on a subsequent vote. Well, there was also, there wasn't just the fact of this obvious, well, the influence that I described goes even farther. The Americans made it clear to the Lebanese parliament and said that if the only way the Israelis are going to withdraw from southern Lebanon is if you vote for him. Otherwise, they won't. Again, this is democracy, American style. I mean, this is just sort of like putting a gun to the head of another country and telling them, okay, this is how we want you to vote. And we've seen similar things, of course, like in Venezuela and so forth. I think it's very shameful, but it's what was done.
Yeah, I saw a tweet from Anthony Blinken congratulating Aoun and saying how he's looking forward to working with them. And I immediately thought, like, well, something's not right here,
Right.
So what do you think this means then for Hezbollah, the end of the ceasefire, the future of Lebanon?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like I say, I think in the last program, I said that Hezbollah has proven itself to be just a very resilient organization. And I think it would always be a mistake to count them out. I think people have done that in the past, and they've always come back. They are facing long odds now, or we should say at least, some very challenging circumstances. But their leadership was wiped out, their organization is still there, and it has very, very strong support from much of the Lebanese population, not just the Shias. They've shown themselves to be like one of the few organizations that really, deliver services to the population and that have defended Lebanon repeatedly. I imagine that many, many Lebanese just feel nothing but contempt for the Lebanese armed forces, but they do respect Hezbollah. So again, they're in a difficult place because of the fall of Syria. I really worry for the future, but we'll just have to see. I think, again, we're going to see a renewal of the fighting in like 2 or 3 weeks when that truce, which Israel constantly violated, comes to an end. I think, we've signals from both sides indicate that the fighting is going to renew, and we'll see how they do. Israel's position is clearly stronger this time around, but they did But Hezbollah put up very, very stiff resistance. The Israel just was not able to make any kind of significant progress. We'll see if they can this time.
Have we heard anything from Iran?
Um, Let me see. I haven't heard anything new. The big event that we should be looking to is the visit of Pezeshkian to Moscow, which is upcoming. Actually, on January 17th, Pezeshkian and Putin are going to sign a very comprehensive agreement between Iran and Russia. And I think that's quite a significant event.
Okay. Interesting. On the last episode, I showed you that video of Jeffrey Sachs, the one that Trump retweeted on Truth Social.
Yeah.
And in that video, he just straight up says that Netanyahu got us into the Iraq war, that this was Netanyahu's war. Is that really true? And if that is true, how so? How did he do that?
Yeah, I know that actually Mearsheimer and Waltz in their Israel Lobby book, I read that quite a few years ago, but it made quite a splash at the time. They argue that in fact it was true. It was it wasn't just Netanyahu, but it was the Israel Lobby that played a decisive role in pushing us into war with Iraq, because again we really didn't have any reason to go to war with Iraq. And in fact, I think if you're looking purely in terms of American interests, it was against our interests to attack Iraq. If we're going to consider Iran the main enemy, I don't think that's necessary either. But we just have. That's been true ever since the fall of the Shah. Well, it just makes sense to prop up Iraq. And because Iraq was of course went to war against Iran, was Iran's main regional rival. So why would you want to take out Iraq? It doesn't really make sense from an American perspective, and it turned out to be disastrous. From that American perspective, because after the Iraqi government fell, Iranian influence in Iraq increased 100-fold, it went from zero to actually to being very extensive, because there's a very large Shia population in Iraq. So it just doesn't, and it's more than that. It's just that you can point to the obvious efforts made by Israel itself, and then Israeli-aligned officials, people that with dual U.S.-Israeli citizenship that were high up in the U.S. government, people like Wolfowitz and was it Perth? I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but there were many individuals that played a crucial role in pressuring the U.S. government to launch its disastrous war against Iraq. Many Israeli-linked officials.
It's amazing to me how we can just get away with it. How our AIPAC can just get away with this. Yeah. That they can start a war, destroy millions of lives, use our militaries, cost the U.S. trillions of dollars, and there's no repercussions for anybody. It seems like they all get promoted.
No. It was a total disaster on just the Iraq war. No matter how you look at it, as you look at the loss of life within Iraq, the strategic consequences for the U.S., the loss of life among American soldiers, the tremendous cost to the U.S., it was just a total disaster. And there's some repercussions, clearly, but but not enough, not nearly enough. I agree.
Is there awareness within the U.S. military how stupid this was and how we were just used by AIPAC and the Israel lobby? Because you think you would. I mean, there's nothing that could be more infuriating for a soldier to say that I'm being lied to fight for an evil cause by some other foreign power. That it just.
Unfortunately, I haven't. I just don't think there really are any dissenters. There used to be. In the U.S. military, but I think they have been weeded out, and it's the careerists, the people who they understand, which way the policy winds are blowing, and and they act and speak and think accordingly. Now, among the rank and file, the actual soldiers, I've learned that it seems like you'll find more real dissenters to U.S. imperial policy among U.S. Army veterans than you will probably among any other group, because a lot of them went over there and say, "Hey, that's not what I was told." They see it with their own eyes, and so they just stop believing what they were told. And I've met people like that. I think they're not very uncommon. But those people, unfortunately, just don't seem to rise to the top within the military.
Right. I mean, we're playing with these people's lives. I think about those soldiers that are U.S. soldiers that are in these bases in Iraq and Syria illegally. I think they understand that they're illegally, and they just got to be wondering, what are we doing here exactly?
And some of them are, yeah.
Right, and just the danger that they're being put in unnecessarily. I think, do you think that it would start to break through to some of them that, are we doing this all just because Israel wants to sacrifice our lives for their cause? And
well, to some of them, and there is, I think it's still really very much a fringe movement. But let's say the anti-Zionist movement, or whatever you want to call it, is growing. It's taking different forms on the left and the right, and it's gone farther on the left because of Gaza. But you see it one thing is just. I always see these memes every time there's a disaster in the U.S. The most recent one being the fires in Los Angeles. There's always memes about sending money to Ukraine, and I think in the case actually, I think the L.A. Fire Department donated equipment to Ukraine. And just one thing is it's highlighted by a lot of people who are sick of it. Are sick of the imperial policy that seems to put the interests of everything but Americans and their own communities first.